Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special guest. Before we introduce our guest and get started here, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's providing hundreds of millions of dollars in funding to school districts, and it doesn't involve the government, and it's in the form of a free gift. So thank you, Ideal Impact, for being our sponsor. And so now let's start the conversation. We have Dr. Rueter from Elgin ISD, and we have our co-host, Corinne French. Thank you all for being on the podcast.
Thanks.
So glad to be here.
Yes, glad to be here.
Yeah, exciting. So before we get into today's topic, Dr. Rueter, if you can, just share a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm seeing your degree behind you there. I have a master's degree from A&M also, but my bachelor's degree was at Texas Tech University, my master's from A&M, and then my doctorate, I had to get to Austin and get a degree from University of Texas as well. So I love learning and going to school, and but it's really helped me have kind of a varied perspective on different things and connections to people. But I grew up in West Texas. My father was a school superintendent. He actually was the former school superintendent here in Elgin ISD 2 superintendents ago. It's kind of funny. He was here 9 years. Yeah. And so lots of stability here. And 4 of the school board members who hired me hired my father 20 years ago. My school board president was his school board president. So that's kind of unique in where we are, but I grew up a school superintendent kid and my mom a teacher. Just such a passion for education. I'm married, have my husband's a school administrator, retired now, and my kids, are college grads, but the youngest is at Texas Tech right now to be a teacher. And so it's encouraging. I really feel a lot of my passion and my background, everything I've done in my career is just to really find those folks who are motivated and passionate about education. And we need them. We need teachers. We need people in our field. And there's so many good folks in there now, but trying to keep them and trying to attract good folks to the field who want to do great things for kids. So that's just a little about me.
What a legacy. Oh my goodness. I used to be a trustee. I can't imagine being able to hire someone that their father was a superintendent. What a legacy.
Yeah, it's great. It's
wow.
great. I'm the 4th generation school superintendent. His dad was a superintendent. His dad was superintendent. Like it just that legacy. It's just been really, really important to me all throughout my life. And I love the work. I love it.
So I want to ask the first question. I know we talked briefly before we started the podcast about something that's impassionate to you, but I can't help. I've got to ask the first question. Did they not say like, this is really going to be hard? Being a superintendent is going to be one of the hardest things you'll ever do. Did they give you a piece of advice, or did just watching them I want to know.
Yes. Yes. And I grew up living it. So I really didn't know anything different. I grew up in that role as a kiddo in the family, but what they did say was, yes, it's difficult. It's very, it's political, like it or not. But you are empowered to really make such a difference and to be an influence for good things and to influence for kids ultimately, don't make a decision that isn't going to be best for kids. And when you're grounded in that, it just helps you to be calm through the craziness, and that you're focused and there's nothing that's going to come your way that you can't have dialogue about, and be growth focused, and let's all come to the table together and find solutions. And it's just it's a great role, and you do get to influence so much. And so it's a great honor to be able to serve in that capacity.
I feel like there's a whole book there that could be written about.
It was my dissertation, actually. It was.
I'm going to find your email after this and ask you for a link, because
that was my dissertation.
I would love to read that. I'm working on a dissertation now, and I think that the legacy, even just teacher to teacher, so teachers who raise students that want to become teachers. That's a whole legacy. But the superintendent piece, I am blown away. So I can't wait to read your dissertation.
Thank you. It is.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about it.
Yeah, the word that comes to mind just based on what Dr. Rueter described in her background is perspective, right? So like everybody that comes on the podcast is looking at public education through a different lens. And well, first of all, so with Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and UT, she has the state covered, right? So yeah, all the rivalries, those go out the window, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So that's really cool. And then I just think I have 3 daughters, and I think about when I was growing up and kind of like some of the things that I talked to my daughters about related to life in general. And being the daughter of a superintendent, I imagine you had to I mean, you just naturally learn different things. You're part of different experiences related to public education. You know, you overhear conversations. It's just things we don't realize we learn. So that's just such a cool perspective that you bring to public education, just based on what you described. So that's so cool. Well, what are you passionate about? What are you passionate about right now related to public education?
Well, and a lot of that perspective that you're talking about and what I've gathered over, been in this now 30 years, and from teacher, assistant principal, executive director, assistant superintendent, now superintendent. And so lots of opportunities working in many districts, and just learning so much from people and from families and kids and teachers and communities. And so this community-based accountability is what I am extremely passionate about, but it all comes from a lot of my background and what I've developed over my career, actually throughout my entire life. And community-based accountability is this idea of, we know we have a state accountability system, of course, that's important, but we also know that what the state is holding districts accountable to and for is really different than what's even necessarily that important to communities, because it isn't just about a test score. And unfortunately, our state accountability system, the whole A through F system, is really based on test scores. That's what it's grounded in. And we also know that right now there's a lot of challenge for public school, and that's something I'm extremely passionate about. And we need to be telling our stories and talking about all the wonderful things that are going on in school districts across the state, across the country, things that we can highlight, that you're not going to find that in other institutions. It's about public schools, and it's the foundation of our democracy in our country, in how we empower students to be as strong and successful as they can possibly be. But community-based accountability is thinking about things through, we have these pillars, we call them, and it's 7 pillars defined by local communities. And these pillars are pillars that are so grounded in what communities are finding through lots of research, lots of town halls. Like, what are communities really passionate about, and school districts passionate about? What do parents want for their kids? And the 7 are student learning in progress, which that includes all student achievement and how, just how they're doing. Student readiness, how are we really developing our kids to be ready for that next level, whether it's a pre-K getting ready for kindergarten, or it's middle school for high school, or high school getting ready them for their future in their lives beyond high school. Engaged, well-rounded students, how are they engaged with learning experiences in the classroom? And then how are they also engaged beyond the classroom, really focusing on opportunities for our kids and what we're providing for them to be engaged and plugged in, because we know if they're plugged in, they're highly likely to be successful and not drop out of school. Community engagement and partnerships is a pillar, and I'll speak to that a little more in a minute, but also professional learning and quality staff. This is super important right now. That encompasses all of our, we talk about a teacher shortage and teacher retention issues and trying to attract people to the profession. Fiscal and operational systems, how we have fiscal and operational systems that support what's best for kids. That has to be the conversation about everything we do. Budgets built around what's best for kids. And then safety and well-being, which that's so powerful right now. And that's absolutely number one priority is our safe schools, and how are we providing safe places for kids physically, but also emotionally and mentally, and not just kids, all the adults, everybody in our system that we're talking about. We have lots of conversations right now around, that's another whole podcast, wellness and mental health, and how we're helping our staff, focus on their own wellness, and our kids as well. So those are the 7 pillars of community-based accountability. And I can just keep talking and talking, but it's something might strike you that you may have a question about in some of that I've talked about, because all of these areas, the thing is, anything and everything we do in the school district will fit under one of these pillars.
They will. Everything does. And I love that how you're mentioning there are state accountabilities. I mean, we have plenty of references to those, but to create the 7, I'm wondering, and we never try to get our guests surprise them with a question, but I feel like you can handle it. Where is the student voice in that? So I'm asking it from this perspective that
yes,
I was a trustee for 10 years. And I have a bunch of children in school and have graduated, and I'm watching some of this after COVID. So post-COVID, post-global pandemic. I'm wondering, when we're talking about future ready or anything that we're saying, where does have we asked any of the students what they need? Have we done that? And I'm not trying to catch you off guard. I just, as you're saying that, I'm thinking are we asking the students what they might need? Because I think they might give us something different than
they do give us something different. And so I'll take the pillar of engaged, well-rounded students, for example. And with each of these pillars, you have these key questions that you ask and you put them out to groups. So for instance, we're going through strategic design right now, planning forward for the next 5 years to do new belief statements and value statements and kind of that mission and belief work, right? But through that, we're incorporating these pillars of community-based accountability. So with engaged, well-rounded students, we ask ourselves these key questions. You always start with, to what degree? So to what degree, the first one is, do we facilitate and value student voice? And I will say that one piece, I believe so strongly in this that we have students that are on our strategic design advisory committee. So we have 100 people involved in this work right now. And I have students from our high school, and I tend to try to use, I'll use kids at all ages for different things. For this particular work, we have our high school students, juniors and seniors, who come, and there's at least one student at every table with the groups of adults. And you have people from all different roles at the different tables. And so we'll throw out key questions and process through key questions. The adults also, we did a SWOT analysis this last time. So the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so the adults are talking, and then I say, okay, make sure you're including your student and asking, and those kids, every time it just whips it around, because the kids have this perspective and they're so empowered. And I meet with them before and I explain to them, we want your voice. We want you to be honest. We need your perspective. And it is amazing what they come up with. But so the other key questions there, and this is what they help answer, because when you ask them that question, hey, okay, tell us, to what degree do we facilitate and value student voice? You know what they say? Not enough. We don't do it enough.
Right.
And then we ask, how could we tell us more about how we can do that better? To what degree do we address the hopes and dreams of students and their parents? It's all around the hopes and dreams. We ask them, what are the hopes and dreams you have for your kids? We ask the kids, what are the hopes and dreams you have for yourself and your future? That's really powerful. To what degree do we consistently provide quality work that interests, challenges, and satisfies all learners? Oh, they have quite an opinion about that. To what degree does learning support every student's area of smartness? Which means everybody has areas of smartness, but my areas of smartness are different than your areas of smartness. And if we don't move away from only focusing on a state accountability system that only focuses on those certain areas of academic strength, right? Then we're telling some kids that they're never good at anything. And that's not true. That's just not true. They're strong. And how do we help shift that narrative and help just empower our kids? Because you know what, if we can help them be strong in other things, the other follows, and it helps them to be stronger, how they grow, or maybe be more attentive to like, okay, hey, if I can go and do this powerlifting that I love, or I can go to my CTE course and focus on the agriculture project that I have, I'm going to work a little harder with my math teacher to try to really see what I need to do to help myself there in that area too.
Yes, that's so powerful. We had a guest a couple weeks ago, an author, a pretty famous author on the podcast, and he was talking about leaning into the strengths of kids and really making them aware of what their strengths are. And it seems like the pillars kind of align with that to a certain extent, where you're like, you're kind of directing them to where they're going to be most successful, and which is very cool. And you hear about people all the time that maybe they didn't make good grades in school, they didn't pass tests, like they should, right? But they grow up to build $300 million companies. I know someone
exactly.
in particular.
Exactly. That's right. They're all around us. Yeah.
Well, that's why the words that you're using on your 7 pillars are words that community members and students understand. Smartness is a word that someone understands. When we some of the state accountability language is hard for like the average person maybe understand, and there's no reason for some of that to be so confusing. So I love the idea of a community based.
And they understand A through F. Okay, but that sends the wrong message.
It does.
That's the wrong message. And we have schools all over who are doing amazing things for kids, but and mostly what we're now hearing is it follows lines of poverty, frankly. So our students who just do not have the same opportunities and access, especially after COVID, that a lot of those opportunities and access were taken away from them. So we're trying to build all that back in and build the strengths back. But it's not just about STAR scores. It's beyond that. It's beyond that state accountability score. Go ahead. You were going to ask a question.
Well, I think we need to have you on like a part 2. Sometimes we always say we want to have guests back on, but Gary, I would love for this to be a part 2 because I think I want to hear I want to hear some of the success stories that are happening already. I think superintendents need to be encouraged, and trustees need to be encouraged. And so I think hearing a specific success story of how this community-based accountability is working for you will help our listeners. So will you tell us one story, just one great story that has happened recently to encourage us?
And I will say too, there are a lot of districts. It's a movement, it's across our nation, but in Texas in particular, there's a group of about 70 districts that are doing this work very intentionally. And we're doing it through TASA, and it's the Texas Public Accountability Consortium. And it started about 6 years ago. It really is a group of us that all came together and said, we want to do more. We want to do more than just have what the state accountability system is. And we want to build a community-based accountability system. And so I will say that I'm new in my district, but in my former district, we used CBAS and had been involved in that work since the beginning of TPAC. And for one example was, let's say we had an elementary school that had gone through a tornado that really, the school was intact, but the entire community, and it was a very, very low income community, and they lost their homes. And so the school is the community center, and through that experience, and we very high numbers we had lots of non-English speaking students and families there. We asked them the question, what are the hopes and dreams for your children and for their future? They wrote letters about hopes and dreams that the kids brought with them back to school. And we took pictures of them, put them with this. And it just started to build this capacity that wasn't there before. And they were buying into like, oh my gosh, this is truly a partnership. And the school cares so much about us. We were able to get community investment and engagement and partnerships because that's another pillar. And so those pillar like key questions, do we engage and coordinate with other groups with the mission to support children? To what degree do we have a healthy reciprocal relationship between community and schools? Well, through these questions, we really were building something pretty amazing. And the buy-in, those parents were so proud. Those kids were so successful. They did better than they had ever done in school. And we helped, the community came in, tried to help rebuild homes, They supported the school. It was just one example of how community-based accountability, we all came together, and it was this very authentic, organic work. That's just one small example. I could give many, many, many more because they're across our entire state with these districts engaged in this work. But in a district really engaged in it, you see it at every grade level on every campus. And they're really excited about it here because I'm bringing this back to this district and getting people excited about what the opportunities are. We're a fast growth district. And so we're looking at, like, we want to have this be what we're all about in our school district.
Yeah, this is definitely a topic that needs to be out there more. So part 2 sounds like a great plan, because and let's get the word out there on this one. I know we're running short on time now. We kind of asked this question at the end, but we're going to talk more about this on part 2 if Dr. Rueter's good with coming on again.
I'm great with it. The more I talk about it, the better. I love it. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So you're going to ask the final question, right, Gary?
All right. Final question. We started this, and we need to remember to do this more. If you're going to give a shout out to someone else to come on the podcast, maybe another superintendent, who do you want to give a shout out to?
Okay, I'm going to tell you another school superintendent who's involved in this work with me, presents with me often. He's a part of TPAC, is Jeff Burke in Splendora ISD. I think you need to have him on.
Splendora ISD. Someone from my leadership TASB class is on that board. So we got it, Gary.
Awesome.
After my next, I'm going to look them up, and I'm going to email you for your dissertation. Yes. We're going to come back with part 2, and we'll be good to go. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. You bet. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Before we close out, we'll give a last shout out to our sponsor, IDO Impact. IDO Impact's providing funding to school districts, hundreds of millions of dollars. So if you need funding and you don't want to rely on the government for funding, reach out to IDO Impact. Everything is in the form of a free gift, and stay tuned for future episodes.